Welcome, Gene, to the Spiritual Ninja podcast. I am super happy to have you here. And I think you have an incredible depth and wisdom to share. And I'm really excited to ask you some questions today. So, welcome, my friend.
Thanks, man. It was good to be here. I don't know how much wisdom I have, but we'll see.
Well, your humility is part of it. So, Gene, looking back at your spiritual journey, often people have something that provoke it in their life, whether it's something, situation, or a person. So, if you reflect back when you first became conscious of going on a spiritual path, and then maybe your journey internally of what practices you've used to help you along the way, and maybe what your experience of that is, and any practices you'd be willing to share with us.
Well, just a quick story or two. My mom says that when I was 8 years old, I actually built a hut in the backyard and I would sit out there for hours and hours and hours reading the Bible and praying because at 8, I wanted to understand. I knew there was something more than what I could see and touch, and I wanted to know. I was a small East Texas town. That was what spirituality was. So that's what I went for. And then I was exposed to meditation when I was 14 years old, but I didn't really stay with it. When you're a teenager, I was flinging back and forth between emotions and goals and ways of doing things. And so I didn't really stick with it. What eventually led me to what would be called a spiritual path. It was just desperation. I realized I was so fearful and so angry, and it just seemed untenable. I couldn't keep going that way. And as usually happens when you're really reached bottom, when you really are so desperate for change, then God shows up and makes things easy for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people share about the dark night of the soul. And I remember not really being aware of spirituality myself and being out of college and going down to this beach and literally raising my arms up and screaming, like, help, please help me. And something inside was not right. And I didn't know what. I didn't know how to consciously call out for God or for spirituality or anything like that. It was just such a deep cry. And I remember soon after that, things started opening up to me for a spiritual path. And so I think, like you mentioned, sometimes this complete desperation or discomfort and being honest, because you could pretend it's not there, but being honest and really being open to something else.
Yeah, about being open to something else. I mean, for me, I was an atheist, like not agnostic, atheist. And there comes a point where if you're honest with yourself, I could not deny the presence of God. It wasn't like I was ready or anything like that. It was just that was what it hit like a sledgehammer for me.
So to me, being spiritual or being with God or being with love or being with vibration or being with nature or the universe, whatever somebody wants to call it, I believe there's this essence that we all come from, and we all have our own interpretation, our own way of connecting with that and to that. How would you share that when you stop and you really want to be as open and connected to God as you can, how do you do that? How do you connect to that within yourself?
One of the ways for me is through movement. I was really shocked, right? I was a big meditator for many, many years, and it's still a daily practice for me to just sit and listen, for God. And I think once you sort of establish the route, then access is just easy. I mean, at least for me, I read this book decades ago, and when there were two main characters, one of them was a dishwasher in a 16th century monastery or something, and another one was a missionary to the Philippines in the late 40s, early 50s. And both of them, we have access to their diaries, and both of them decided that they weren't acknowledging God's presence in their lives often enough. And this is independent of one another, right? Like hundreds of years apart. And they each decided that what they would do was every time they saw a vertical line, they would pause and acknowledge God's presence. And reading their diaries, it's like a biography for me, the track, the timeline, everything, the amount of time it takes. But once you have that route sort of established to acknowledge God's presence and and how it feels and what it's like to be immersed in that is, it's just simple as just that. That's it. You can do it. But what really shocked me was, movement, one time. It was during COVID, and I was swinging this big staff. It's kinda heavy. A guy made it for me. I don't use a stick or anything like that, but it was fun. And I'm swinging this thing back and forth like a pendulum. That same feeling opened up, and I kind of just fell into that again. Honestly, I mean, I know about prayer and meditation and accessing God in that way, but I was really shocked to find out through experience that you can access God through movement. I did not see that coming. That wasn't my aim. I didn't set it up that way or anyway. It just happened. It was a sort of an emergent deal. So I'm just out there and I'm moving it, and what I was trying to do was not interfere with the movement of the stick. So I'm using gravity and I'm moving and letting it pendulum around and moving it around me, and I'm trying to not interfere with its movement at all. And that same sort of disappearance into God's presence and awareness of that boundary dissolving came from physical movement. So I think there's probably many ways, and I just stumble from one to another.
I know I had one person tell me, and I agree with this, that there are as many paths to God as many people are on the planet. And I think it's all the same, but different, right? Very similar, but very unique. My understanding is you've used Christianity, Native American, meditation, Tai Chi, a variety of practices that you feel at this time period in your life or in the moment that help you enter God, enter love, enter the universe. Now, for some people, if they already have a practice and it's working for them, and this is just supporting that, hearing this, and it's inspiring, great. But some people may be like, hey, I really want to be able to do this. I just don't know how. How would you support somebody in finding that path inside themselves, or a path, or at least starting to know where to look and what to do?
I would say the first thing is, what are the obstacles that keep you from experiencing God's presence or dissolving into God's presence? What noise is keep you from hearing what God is trying to say? Yeah. So I would say our minds and our personalities create obstruction. And so things that get you out of your mind. For example, swinging that stick for me, my mind was quieted by the fact that I'm just seeking to be congruent with gravity. So I think some people are afraid of meditation, and that's okay. That's a legitimate fear. So maybe you have something to focus on. There's a prayer called the Jesus prayer. It's super simple. You say, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. And having that, just pray that a lot will quiet the mind. For me, the movement with the stick quieted my mind enough for God to become evident, to dissolve into that. There's a neat Native American practice that I like. It's when you see something that is awe-inspiring, make a physical acknowledgement in some way. Like, you can carry some cornmeal with you or something like that, and you see a beautiful hawk, right? Or a beautiful flower or something, the clouds rolling in, and it evokes a feeling of awe or something. Do some sort of physical acknowledgement. I don't think it matters at all what it is. And then you start to notice more and more and more the gaps when you are unconscious become smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah. I'm a Christian myself, and for me that's a important thing. But there's a Bible verse. It's I wrote it down, Matthew 27:51. And basically, when Jesus was crucified and died, there was a veil in the church, in the synagogue in Jerusalem, is 60-foot tall, real thick material, and it's split from the top down. And the way that's interpreted it, before this veil separated the church place proper from the Holy of Holies, where the priest could only go there once time a year. And when Jesus was crucified and died, this veil tore from the top down, and the symbolism is interpreted as now there's nothing between us and God. Everyone can have their personal relationship with God. There's no religion between you and God. I do think that the paths exist. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, I guess, is my thing. So, but yeah, for me, it's direct personal access. And I've always been super lucky or blessed, however you want to put it. Like a lot of people I know really struggle. And for me, it just came real easy. I think maybe I was more desperate, more angry, and more afraid than other people. So maybe that was it. I don't know.
When you were speaking, a few things came to me. One was that if you are able to rest and let go of any interference, that God is the natural state, that love, universe is the natural state. Two is whether it's to Christianity or whatever practice may work for somebody that allows them to focus on God, that isness, but also to use those practices to not focus on the things that take you out of it, whether it's the chatter of your mind, whether it's insecurities, fears, whatever distractions are. So you're through that prayer, for example, you're focusing on that. I know another person recently said to me that their prayer creates like a wall between them and their negative thoughts because they're focusing on their prayer. So all that seems very logical and intuitive in many ways. Now, I know for some people, when something comes up that's a consistent block, whether it's insecurity, fear, comparison, jealousy, and you're like, wow, that thing keeps coming up, that keeps interfering. Do you have any other practices that you use to understand that, to come to peace with that, to somehow not let that be such a big issue for you internally?
Yeah, for me, that's pretty easy. I think it's a misconception. About these things. I lift weights. I enjoy it. And some days I can lift a lot, and some days I can't lift that much, but it's never effortless. So I think that sometimes people think I'm going to sit down and quiet my mind. And then when they're try and they're not successful, they think that's a failure. To me, that's like working the muscle, right? To the volume knob to turn down the noise. Do I have specific practices personally? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I know you've shared with me and you're just sharing now of let's say anger. If you're like, "Man, I just get so angry so intensely so quickly." Do you just see that as an energy and you're like, "Okay, I just need to use that energy and dissipate it through exercise or movement or something?" Or do you say, "Wow, why do I get angry so often and so intensely?" And is there an understanding? I'm not saying you do anymore, but I know you were referring to that. But is there, I'm using that example, is there something of some type of understanding that you bring to that that helps you have some kind of healing or that doesn't make it such a big thing in your life anymore?
Yes. So for me, I don't. I asked why I got so angry once a couple years ago, and I was like, "Yep, that makes sense. Well learned." Now I don't care why. I just I think of it as noise between me and God. For me personally, I start with my body, and the symptoms of anger that you feel, tension and breath interruption and things like that. And so I relax my body and I use breathing to calm down. I don't worry too much about why. I know why. And so, yeah, I just deal with it physically, usually. Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like to me that, let's say anger or something comes up and you just keep it in perspective like, hey, you know what? This is just some energy. I'm going to use my body and my breathing to settle it. And I don't need to go into a whole story about it because I already understand the story. And it's just a moment in
Yeah.
time and I release the energy and continue.
Everybody has a story. I remember one time I was sitting in a parking lot watching people walk by. And, I very clearly saw this, like, soul riding along in the person, right? And, it was like this person really, really believed they were a banker? And their souls in there just laughing. It's like, "Okay, you can play banker if you want to?" And the next person, "I'm a housewife, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever." So, I I I know Gene. I understand why he's angry sometime, and things like that. But I also know the me that is not angry, you can say it's a small piece of God, a small piece of divine in the image of God, however you want. But it's so yeah, for me, anger is not me. I mean, I take accountability and responsibility for it because I don't need to spread that on other people. But for me, it's just a layer of noise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are many ways that people say the same kind of things, but recently I've been experiencing a little bit as like the universal self and the personal self. And the personal self is just my story. And in my own experience of it, connecting to the universal self has allowed me to, and I've said this before, almost like parent my personal self and be like, hey, all is good. We got this. We'll take care of you. You don't need to worry about it. And you can just relax and settle down because it's just insecurity, fear, or whatever it is noise and interference and energy. And once you see it from the perspective of it's really not that big of a deal, just don't intentionally hurt people with it or yourself, but it's not a big deal. Just come back to the universal self, to God, to meditation, to prayer, to nature, to whatever it is for you in the moment.
Oh, a guy told me one time, he goes, you're in this river of love flowing down towards the ocean. And all of a sudden, you find yourself up on the bank. Well, you can sit there and work it out. Why I'm here? How did this happen? What do I, blah, blah, blah. Or you can just jump back in.
Yeah.
For me, I don't, I just jump back in.
So I'm going to switch gears now to relationships. So when we're coming from our stories and from our unresolved issues, it mirrors us in our relationship. So I'm curious, as you've grown as a person and become a little more at peace with yourself, how would you say that spirituality has impacted your relationships, whether it's with your loved one, with your family, with your students, whatever it may be?
I should have them line up and tell you. That would be a testimonial because I was not a very nice person before and pretty exhausting to be around. And now people remark on it daily. They're like, man, you're so much kinder than you were, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, a decade ago.
It's very
I think for
beautiful.
me, that's very important, right? Is that I'm evolving towards being more joyful and more kind rather than more fearful or bitter. That's important to me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, my relationships, I think before I could only see from my perspective of was that a threat to me or not? And if that person wasn't perfectly aligned with me, then I might cast that away or something. Where now I'm a lot more aware of us as people. We have all of us flaws and I'm just more forgiving and understanding. And so that makes me more loving and kind, I think. I hope. Well, that's what people say. So
Yeah, when you were speaking, I was getting the sense, which I also know from you, but that you're doing that toward yourself more, of course. So, because if you're always fighting from the inside, regardless of what's happening on the outside, that's going to interfere with your relationships. But because you've softened on the inside, it's allowing you to enter the moment from a softer place instead of from a guarded place as much.
I had a real interesting experience, honestly. I don't know if I've told you about this, but I was in Colorado. I went up there and climbed a couple of Keeners, and I was on my way. I came back down. I'm in my truck, and I'm driving through Colorado. I'm swinging out through Arizona and stuff to see a guy out there. And I pulled over to the side of the road. There's a river running right next to the highway, and it was public land. I pulled over because I was just having this really odd experience, really weird feeling. And I sat there for about an hour and I was like, I think I miss people because
Mm,
in my life, I've never missed anyone. I mean, I'm telling the truth. Like once they're out of sight, that's it. I mean, that's a sort of a fearful response that I've strapped on as I was growing up, where it's like, hey, I'm right here, right now, and anything that's not right here, right now, I don't even remember it. It's gone completely. And I was sitting there on the side of the road, and I was like, you know what? I actually miss these people. I miss the community and hanging out and playing and moving and breathing and things like that. And so that's an example of an ongoing evolution in that relationship stuff and how the spirituality, I don't like that word that much because a lot of times people use it and it sounds sort of haughty or so. I know a lot of super spiritual people that are freaking miserable. They're not happy and they're not healthy or anything else. But that's the truth. As you become more completely who you genuinely are, as the soul sort of squeezes out the fear and insecurity and persona, or the what you call the personal self, as that gets squeezed out by the soul or the universal self, or however you want to call it, you evolve and relationships become much, much sweeter and kinder and precious to you. Yeah.
Yeah, as you just said, like for example, spiritual, any word that we use for somebody, it's going to cause a positive or negative thing. And for
Yeah.
me, there's like I'm personally good with love or God or universe or spirituality because I know what it means for me. But I saw the other day in relation to this podcast, somebody asked was sharing something really beautiful, and I saw somebody write down like God is man made, and I was like, I would love to talk to that person because
You
it
know,
doesn't
they're
matter.
in
Say it
that
again.
person that wrote that is in pain.
Yeah, so what I want to say is like it doesn't matter what you call it. The other day I interviewed this guy who was very aware of science and he was talking about the miracle of the Big Bang. I can't even remember how he said it, but like the 1 millionth of a second, this or that, then none of it would have happened either direction. And so to me, there's a miracle, there's a spark, there's this essence of life that when we settle into it, you experience yourself in the most beautiful way. And then you see the miracle of life, and then you're ready to do your best in the world because it's a natural creative expression of that. So if a word bothers you, not you, Gene, but you or me too, I'm talking to anyone listening. If a word bothers you, if God bothers you, if spirituality or Christianity, meditation, Judaism, go beyond all that. Go to the root. And you want to feel love. You want to feel grounded and rooted. Call it what you would like, but give yourself the permission to experience that and not to have a word put so much tension between you or me or anyone that we can't hear that. So
Well,
it's always
it's
really important.
understandable, right? It's understandable. A lot of people have had really bad experiences. It's called church hurt, where somebody somewhere, instead of recognizing the pain and loneliness, decided that they needed to squeeze you into another cage that they constructed with the word or something like that. Yeah, I know people that even the word God, it sort of creates a restriction in them, a reflexive thing, and it's because they've been hurt, by
Hmm.
people who I would like to say they mean well, but I'm not even sure they mean well, but they want to beat you over the head with God or something like that, and it's like, man, from my personal experience, that's not how God reveals or shows up in your life. I saw a deal the other day. A guy said, because people want to have things packaged in such a way that they understand it. It doesn't matter if it's a breathing exercise and they're telling, in for, out for, hold for, whatever, but they don't say for what. 4 seconds, 4 breaths, 4 heartbeats, 4 anything. So something in the human mind needs to codify and put language to something. And those are great. Like I said, I think that the ways that are around worked for someone. So need to cast them aside. But for me, I'm with you. I would sort of steer someone more towards what is your personal experience of God, right? That is the way in my opinion, which is, worth about a quarter if you got one. But I do for whoever wrote that, God is an invention of man. It's like, man, okay, that's fine. I'm sorry that you're in pain.
Yeah.
That's all I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
say about that.
And again, I understand, like I've spoken to many people in my life who have been hurt spiritually and religiously in different ways, in different religions, different groups, different things. It's not like it's that uncommon. So it, like you said, hurt is hurt. And then to feel like you got hurt by supposedly the thing that's the purest is really devastating, confusing. So I 1000%, I get it. I've experienced it. And so, that is true. I think the thing for me personally is whatever somebody wants to call it, give yourself the space to do that if it brings you closer to love and to connection and feeling part of something bigger than just your personal story and hurt. And that allows you to have healthy relationships like you just shared about. And the other thing that I think in my experience and seeing it with people a lot is people that are very deeply rooted in what we're talking about are able to perform at a much higher level in the world in a way that's more creative and adaptive and intuitive than just being like, okay, I have this goal and I'm going to achieve it. Because no question, we need discipline and focus, but the world changes, it adapts, it flows, it goes up and down, the weather changes. So to be able to become a high performer, these qualities of presence and adaptability and flow and connection are critical. And so I've seen you perform at a very high level in, say, martial arts, being an author, and any goal you do with these, crazy, these high mountains you climb and all these things, you have a really clear path. You're going to do something, you set a goal, and you probably have your plan to do it, which I'd love to you to share a little bit about how, coming from your depth, how do you go from being right here in love to accomplishing something?
So that to me, though, that is not a journey. There's no distance between those 2 points that you just pointed out. They're on a different map, right? Uh, so I study a lot of philosophy. I actually just completed a course on the philosophy of religion, which was really good. They offered all the old and contemporary explanations are offered as proofs of God's existence and all the arguments against and so forth. There really is no way that's gonna satisfy somebody. Like, there's a comedian, he says, "So for you, it's easier to believe that there was nothing, and then there was the entire universe contained in a speck that was smaller than a grain of sand, and then in an instant that exploded and the whole universe came into being. That's easier for you to believe than believing in God." So everybody, I've sorta don't try to convince people of anything, but in terms of the effect of evolving in the direction of being more immersed in the presence of God. So it sort of lines out your hierarchy for you. So you put God first, and then the everything else sort of falls into place. Even as you pray, right? Even you don't believe in God. If you sat down to pray and you started to say the things that you're grateful for and the things that you would want protection for, right? So you just literally articulated your personal hierarchy in praying. In believing in God, then you're looking at something that is beyond what we can describe other than to say maybe it's the most excellent of excellent things. It's the sum of all excellent things. I'm not sure. I don't really want to try to explain that stuff because the people that do are super smart. I can say for me, actions that you take out of fear or insecurity are not going to move you in the direction of concrete things that you want to achieve. Things that you so dialing down the noise, right, and honing in on what you really want and who you really are, um, those things.
I see you, from my perspective, very intentionally, I don't know if accomplishing is the right word, but very intentionally setting out to do something. And I feel like you're very strategic about it. So I understand that you're coming, like, this is the way I would say it. You're coming from a clearer place in yourself to be clear on what you're trying to accomplish. And then you're probably laying out some of the steps to get there. And then you're being adaptive with them, I'm guessing. But how would you describe how you accomplish so many things that you do? How do you get a vision or a goal or whatever it may be? And then how do you set out to do that?
Well, I guess I start with I wanna be useful for as long as I can, and then I start to flesh out what does that mean? Like, I can be financially useful, I can help you move a couch, I can be an example of transformation is possible. I would like to be I'm not at it at all, but I would love to be a being that people would look at and go, "That guy has something that I want." I remember one time I met these 2 ladies, they were going door to door, witnessing, which at the time I was an atheist, but I was still, like, open to hearing whatever people believed. I thought they were foolish, but I was willing to hear them out, and these 2 ladies glowed. I mean, like, literally, physically glowed, and I wasn't on drugs or I don't do any of that stuff. I can look at someone and see, "Oh, this person is joyful, they're full of joy." They shine in a way. They emit some positive light to the people around it. I'm a guy, like, if something breaks, you can call me, I can probably help you fix it, you know? If there's a problem in the real world that pops up, I probably have seen it or can help with it a little bit. I would love to be that in a larger sense where if people felt adrift or something, they could go, "Hey, Gene's doing something over there that look at him. I wanna be happy."
That's
But I don't know
beautiful.
if that's really, gonna happen or not.
No, I see it happening. I see
Yeah.
that happening
So,
with you.
I don't know if that answered the question, man, but how do I yeah, just I how can I be useful? What does that mean? And then I just go do it. Like, you always get derailed by stuff. You get injured here or something changes and you're not able to do that. Yeah, just keep moving in that direction. But for me, the order of those shouldn't be confused. It's always God first, and then the other stuff is in service of the notion of being useful.
100%. And I think, again, I keep reiterating this. If somebody hears you or me say God or whatever word, hear that as the deepest, purest you, like the thing that's beyond the insecurities and the fears, as the energy, the source that made you. The more you're able to rest into that and be that, the clearer you are for everything, for your relationship with yourself, relationship with others, relationship with what you're doing in the world. So you have a clarity and a depth as opposed to doing actions hoping to get something to make you feel okay or to validate
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, that's where you go way off course is when you start trying to find things to numb the pain or distract you from that, Yeah, those don't lead anywhere good. We both know people that their lives are so frenetic that they don't have time for God.
If your life was a message, the way that you're living and behaving and acting and the energy you're putting out to the world, what message do you hope people receive from you in your life?
The message, yeah, that fear shrinks your cage, love expands your life and makes it more joyful. Yeah, that's it.
And just a couple more questions that are the big questions people often ask when they get on a so-called spiritual path or religious path of like, who am I and what is the purpose of life?
Yeah, who am I? I know, and I can offer an easy answer, which is you are a spiritual being. Some people say, a small piece. Some people say we're created in the image of God. Something about you is divine. But what I think doesn't really matter. What matters is that if you're interested in knowing who you are, you need to be quiet enough to find out. I'm gonna say you could be a fisherman, you could be a, long haul driver, but I'll say this, it's harder and harder for people to find that time and that quiet place because the world is so full of distractions. I mean, when they came out with smartphones, I think that was a cliff that the human species just fell off of. Whatever your thing is, climbing mountains, prayer, meditation, movement that consumes so much of your mind that you're not thinking of anything else, that's where you will find who you are. What is the purpose of life? In my opinion, the purpose of life is to evolve into all that you were capable of being. And if the highest that I'm capable of being is a reflection of God, then what parts about me don't belong there, don't contribute to that. There's a book, it's called, The Little Soul and the Light, I think it's called. It's a children's book, and, basically the premise is that a soul comes to Earth to have a life so that it can expand its capacity for loving God, and I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. 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 Well, having known you for a long time, one thing I think you're a beautiful example of somebody coming from my perspective, a very heavy story and a very heavy past, and not living your whole life blaming and being angry, and therefore this is why I am who I am. At some point, you were like, I'm miserable and I'm angry. and I got to find another way. And seeing you through the years transform, and then after being shot, all that, I think that was another thing that softened you in so many ways. And I maybe seeing death, but I saw a huge shift in you after that.
Yeah, there were a couple things. Definitely seeing death and seeing like, "Oh, that's not the finish line. That'll do it for you." But something like the outpouring of kindness and care really rocked me, man, because I was very much on my own. I have a dim view of most people, but, in that time of, my most vulnerable part of my life, the outpouring of love and care was overwhelming, and I mean, that was a transformative thing for me. I mean, it's a slow emerging, evolving thing, but that's another thing. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're laying there in the mud and you're bleeding to death and you don't die, you realize what's important and what's not, you know? And it gets harder to fool you about like, "Oh, I need this house, I need this person to like me, or I need this or that." Like, nah, it gets pretty clear, what's important.
Right on. Well, I have immense appreciation, love, and respect for you as your commitment to God, to love, to truth, whatever you like to call it, and that we have the opportunity to share that with each other and support each other in our lives. And just even taking this time together right now is super special to me. And so thank you for your
Oh,
time
man,
and your love.
yeah, I love you, brother. I mean, you were there for me in my dark, dark hour and never said a word about it, you know? And I acknowledge that. And, to a large degree, the life I'm able to have right now is due to you. So I'm grateful. We're very different. That would be something that would be interesting for somebody to see. You and I are so very different in so many ways, but in our devotion to God or love, or, however you want to say, we're both of us are totally aligned. Like that is the central focus for both of us. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's a good example to me of relationships because yes, you could be like, I don't get this guy, and I could be like, I don't get this guy, but
Yeah.
we see like the hierarchy again, right? What's the most important thing? And in that
Yeah.
hierarchy and that commitment, that dedication, we're like, hey man, we're both trying to do this similar thing in our way of doing it and being true to our uniqueness, whatever that is, with the divine. And with that commitment, it sure is nice to have a team to be able to connect and friends like that, even if the color or the flavor is different. And that's right.
uh, it's really nice to have community, to have someone that you don't even have to say anything. You can just kind of look at each other and smile. It's nice.
Yeah. It's like that thing, God, I see you. a-
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like that. Like, and if you're just present and loving and someone looks at you and if they're open and vice versa, you're like, oh, that's thanks for that reminder. Cause you see the presence in somebody that reminding you to be in the presence.
Yeah. I have the funniest life, man. Like, I walk around and, like, strangers come up and wanna, like, hug you, or find out, like, what your secret is or something like that, and it's like, "Wow, I guess, Tex-Mex and, Tai Chi." I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's beautiful because if you go back to what you said earlier about hoping that people would see you that way, and you just got the reflection that people are, so it's beautiful transformation. And again, anyone listening to this, if no matter how dark you get, I mean, I've been there, but I know firsthand looking at Gene, who's speaking today, he physically, mentally, emotionally, he was very, very dark and deep and hurt and lost in so many different ways. And to see where he is today, hopefully you can use it as inspiration to know that's in you as well. Like he has it as much as you or anybody. It's just us taking ownership of that for lack of better words.
100%. There's a way out. You're not stuck.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. And I appreciate you and I love you and look forward to seeing you next time.
Love you, brother.